what I mean? Like, that's how I feel about this album. It's like a movie that you pay to go to the theater and see and go, okay, whatever. It wasn't any good, but I have no desire to watch it on DVD when it comes out. Like, I saw it, I'm done with it, move on, next. That's how I feel about this album. Like, there's no staying power to it whatsoever. There's not one song that I'm going to say, oh, dude, you got to listen to this. It's just, I listened to it once, I got through it, barely, and I'm not doing it again. Like, that's how I feel. It's just, it was nothing. This explains why after 9 albums I've never gotten into these guys. It's because I've heard a couple of their tracks before, on again, off again, was never impressed and never went any further, and now I know why. Because when you force yourself to listen to an entire album of these guys, you still walk away going, that's not any good. And on top of that, your vocalist sucks. And on top of that, the album sounds like shit. And so when you combine all of that, you get a score of 4 out of 10 from me. There you go.
Hey, this is Tony Piccoli from Imminent Sonic Destruction. You're listening to According to Metal.
Joining us on According to Metal this week, and we're really excited to have this guest for a handful of reasons. A, he's a great vocalist and a bunch of great bands that we've known and loved for quite some time. But B, this is an album we've been wanting to review for a couple of months, knowing that it was going to be coming out. And it just so happens this is the episode where A, we're going to review the latest release from this band, but B, we happen to have the guy who's the vocalist for this band joining us as a guest here on According to Metal. So, of course, you may know him from some incredible bands he's been a part of, but right now, of course, he's part of Sirius Black, and we're really excited to have him on the show. Urban Breed, what's going on, man? Welcome to According to Metal.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, this will be fun, won't it?
I think it'll be fun. Now, you did give us a little heads up, and I want to give all the listeners a little heads up, too. You're hopped up on steroids right now, so if at any point you have some roid rage or things happen, I just want to warn the listeners now that he's out of control already, and we're like, 45 seconds into the interview. So I have
quite frankly, if I wasn't, we couldn't be doing this interview. I had no voice yesterday, so there we go.
Well, there you go. Well, we appreciate having little voice, you joining us. And speaking of voice, want to start out with this. This is a question we like to ask some of our guests that come on this show because we just find it kind of fun. Yeah. What is... And this could be something you like to sing. This could just be a style of music, a band. Doesn't matter. What is an absolute guilty pleasure of yours as a fan of music? Like, for example, I love Phil Collins, whether he's in Genesis or solo, and I don't give a damn what you think. So that's my absolute guilty pleasure.
He's great.
Yeah, he is. I'll crank Sue Studio up all day long and not care.
And I love Dido, so there you go.
Yeah, see, I didn't even know that about you, Biv. Wow. So there's Biv's guilty pleasure. So with that, Urban, what is your guilty pleasure?
The Andrews Sisters.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely fantastic.
I would have never guessed that.
No, most people wouldn't, of course. It's not the obvious thing, but I'm really big on the Andrews Sisters. I think they're fantastic.
Wow.
Or they were, I should say, but still.
Yeah.
Their music is around.
Interesting. Well, that's we've had people say Motown before.
Yeah.
We've had a handful of people say, I wouldn't have guessed the Andrews Sisters of all people. So that's that's interesting. Well, that's and speaking of that, it kind of takes me to this. When we're talking about your sound in particular, when I hear you sing, my first, a lot of people know you from Tad Morose, and you were incredible in that band. My first taste of Urban Breed, which doesn't really sound really good, but the way I just said that, but was maybe I'm on the roids, but anyway, was actually when you were when I heard Nosferatu from Bloodbound. I'm like, this dude wails, and to me, you're kind of a combination. This is just what my ears hear. I get some tinges of Dio. I get some tinges of like Ripper Owens a little bit. I even get some kind of Mike Howe era metal church sound in some ways. But you're not a guy who I can just say is a flat out metal vocalist. So the Andrews Sisters make sense to me because when I hear songs like As Daylight Breaks, like your title track from your first album with Sirius Black,
yeah,
your clean voice is incredibly, incredibly good. And I know that you never aspired to be like a vocalist in the first place, but were there some singers, besides the Andrews Sisters, obviously, but were there some singers, either growing up or even now that you go, man, if I not only do, when I grow up and I become a metal singer, I want to sound like these guys, or even people you're hearing now that make you go, God, man, those guys are great.
Well, obviously this is the case. I mean, you have role models, and you have like idols that you look up to. And like you said, you probably already heard this story a number of times. I didn't really want to be a singer. I wanted to play the bass. Yeah. I just spoke up. I spoke up too late in the first band, so I ended up having to sing. And as you start singing, you start looking at people, and you try to figure out what do you want to do. And what I really wanted to do at that time was I wanted to sound like Bruce Dickinson.
Nice.
That was the biggest hero, And at that time, I was 13 or 14. You can't possibly sound like Bruce Dickinson. so it's kind of disheartening. And, from that, you just pick up more and more things. And early on, I started digging backwards in history, ran into Rainbow and Uriah Deep Purple. And it just kept going backwards. So Dio is, of course, also a very big influence. So there you go. I would say, like with the Mike Howe, I think that's more or less just a matter of physiology. I think maybe we have a very similar voice box.
Yeah.
And it's more that than we actually have that I've ever tried to aspire to sounding like that. But I do hear the similarities between Mike Howe and myself sometimes. But it's not quite, you can tell the difference. You can tell.
Oh, sure. No, certainly.
Mike Howe. But I see the similarities. Yeah, absolutely.
No, Urban, Now, with Project Arcadia, I heard in an interview that you did a couple years ago that they kind of contacted you and you kind of had to decide, hey, do I fit into this? And if I do, how can I contribute? With Sirius Black, was it much the same? Did they contact you? How did this whole thing come to be? Because it really seems like I know supergroup is overused, but a bunch of members from a bunch of different bands from a bunch of different countries. So how did this even come to be?
Well, it's Mario's doing, really, the bass player. He was the one that decided that he wanted to start a band with people that knew what they were doing. And this is also a way to get people from all over the place. I was the last one in because obviously I was the one that lived the farthest away from everybody else. And they had a hard time getting a hold of me because at this point in time, I didn't even exist on Facebook. I would still not be on Facebook if it wasn't for the fact that I'm now in Sirius Black and we're signed to AFM. With those two parties pressuring me into going on Facebook, I finally caved in and did it. This is very rare. I hardly ever cave into peer pressure. However, it made, business sense. So I did it. So there you go.
Well, speaking of being so far away, now, if I understand correctly, you are originally from Sweden and you moved to the United States. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Now, please tell me that wasn't a career move for metal, because
no, you're right. If that was the case, I'd be the stupidest guy in music ever.
Well, I'm like,
I should have basically just stayed in Europe. It's got nothing to do with that. It's entirely personal. So
okay. I was going to say, because that just didn't make any sense to me at all. But
let me get back to Mario's work here with contacting everybody. So he actually brought in person after person after person, and they started working on a lot of music for the first album. And when they finally got a hold of me, I told them flat out, you got to know that if you want me in here, you're going to have to take me with everything that comes with it. Basically, I'm a really headstrong singer. If I want to sing something, I'll sing it. If I don't want to sing it, I won't sing it. I mean, you can argue with me, and if I agree that you're right, I might give it a try, and we'll see. But if I don't see the merit of your arguments, I am not going to fold. I am simply not going to fold. I will sing what I want, and that's it. I told them this to begin with, and I said, all right, let's do it anyway. And so that's how it started, and this is how we're rolling.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to a question I have for you, because, I mean, you guys are considered by many to be pretty much a metal supergroup, and in that regard, and obviously the rest of the band being from Europe, and you're, of course, living here in the States. When it comes to recording the album, I mean, I know obviously you're originally from Sweden, but how did you go about recording the two albums with Sirius Black? Was it in studio, or was it, they crafted all the music over there and you just added your vocals over here, or how did that work? Kind of take us through that.
Well... Okay, so if you read the liner notes, you'll be fed a bunch of bullshit.
Well, there you go. This is why we're asking.
This is why we're asking. Exactly.
Well, yes. Band policy. I don't care. Anyway, basically, I can just start with this album because it's easier. Bob laid down the basic tracks in his studio in Greece. I lay down all my vocals here at home in my studio. And that's really the basic of it all. The drums were recorded in a separate studio entirely. And after that, we shipped them all in for Jan to mix it. And I will say that I said all the vocals weren't really recorded here because I tracked 2 demos while I was spending time in the Czech Republic with Jan. And I tracked them in his kitchen, in the kitchen of his studio. He was sitting in the studio doing a mix for another band, and I got these ideas, and I decided, hey, why don't I track this demo? And I sent it over to Bob, and the vocals were so good that we kept them. So that's how that went. Yeah.
Now, were you peeling potatoes at the time, or no?
No potatoes. No. But I had some traditional Czech food in the fridge.
Very good.
I can't pronounce it, though. I cannot speak Czech.
I was going to say neither of us probably could.
But it was tasty.
No. Well, that's really cool. Now, one of the things that's very, and in many ways, I hate categories and labels and pigeonholing a band. I hate that.
But what do you do?
But to some degree, you have to, so that, if somebody doesn't like death metal, you don't want to show them death metal. So
yeah.
With your sound, and we talked about your sound a little bit earlier, but with the band sound in general, it's so diverse. How would you describe? Now, I've heard some people say they're power metal. I've heard other people say they're traditional heavy metal. Where would you, if you had to put yourself into one main category to tell someone this is kind of what we're into?
Yeah, well, I see exactly what you're talking about here. Because the thing is, the whole thing started, Mario wanted a power metal band. And so I'm fine with just saying, okay, it's power metal. I'm absolutely fine with that. It's fine. However, like you said, it goes from hard rock, AOR to... We span quite a lot. I will say, though, that, whatever. It's good music. If you have to call it something, call it power metal then. And play it to people that might have a little wider taste than that, and they'll be happy.
Speaking of your sound, if we had to say, if Urban was, 5 minutes, you can play one track for somebody to check out what Sirius Black sounds like, what would that song be?
Well, at this moment, I would have to say, just play Castor Skies.
Which is your first single
Great
off the album.
choice.
So, yeah. Killer track. And in fact, with your permission, Urban, we want we're going to talk about that later on here when we do the review of the album, but one of the great better songs on the album for sure. So let's check out Castor Skies off of Mirrorworld.
Why not?
Let's do it. This is Sirius Black. Check them out, guys.